Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at early safety testing in drug development, specifically safety pharmacology and off-target screening.
Sounds pretty intense.
It is, actually,
Yeah,
because it's all about making sure new drugs are safe before they even get near human trials.
right. Catching those problems early is key.
So say you're a scientist, you've got this amazing new drug you're working on. Where do you even start with safety? What's the first thing you check?
Well, one of the most fundamental things is like, how does this drug interact with the body? How is it absorbed, distributed, metabolized, and excreted? Like the whole process. We call it ADME.
ADME, got it. So why is that so important for safety? I mean, it's just like where the drug goes, right?
Right, but understanding ADME helps us predict how a drug will behave in the body. Like if a drug gets absorbed too fast, you might get like a sudden spike in concentration and boom, you've got an adverse reaction. Or if it doesn't break down properly, it can build up and become toxic.
Makes sense. Like it's a delicate dance between the drug and the body. You got to understand the steps to make sure things go smoothly.
Exactly. And one of the key things we look at is the apparent volume of distribution. We call it V. It tells us how much the drug spreads throughout the body.
Okay, V for volume.
Yeah.
But how do you measure a volume when it's like not a real physical space? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a theoretical concept, but it's based on real measurements. So we look at the drug concentration in the plasma after we give a known dose. If that concentration is low, it means the drug spread out a lot, leading to a large V.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Imagine pouring like a cup of colored water into a bathtub.
Hmm.
If the color stays concentrated, the volume's small. But if it spreads out through the whole tub, that's a large volume.
That's a great analogy. So a drug with a large V would be like that color going everywhere. It really gets around.
It does.
Could that make it riskier, though? I mean, spreading out like that.
It can. A large V often means the drug is reaching more tissues, and that increases the chance of what we call off-target effects.
Off-target effects. You mean like the drug hitting things it's not supposed to?
Exactly. And those off-target effects, well, they can lead to some pretty unexpected and sometimes even harmful side effects.
Oh, wow. So how do you try to catch those off-target effects early on?
Well, we've got a few tools we use. One of them is the hERG assay. It focuses on potential heart risks.
hERG. What does that stand for?
It refers to a specific gene that codes for a potassium channel in the heart. It's super important for regulating the heart's rhythm.
Oh, yeah, those potassium channels. They help control the electrical activity of cells, right?
Exactly. And if a drug blocks that hERG channel, it can mess up those electrical signals in the heart, and that could lead to some really dangerous arrhythmias.
So the hERG assay is like a heart safety check. Are there other early safety tests like that?
Yeah, another one is the liver enzyme assay. It helps us identify drugs that might be toxic to the liver.
Right, the liver's like the body's big detox center. It breaks down all kinds of stuff, including medications.
Exactly. The liver has all these enzymes that break down drugs, and if a drug messes with those enzymes or directly harms liver cells, well, you can get liver damage.
So hERG is for heart risks, and the liver enzyme assay is for liver risks. What about all the other potential off-target effects, like everything else in the body?
Well, that's where things get more complicated. There are so many potential targets in the body, it's impossible to test for all of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do you even start to figure that out? What are the next steps in this whole safety investigation?
Well, that's where off-target screening comes in. It's kind of like detective work. We try to find those hidden clues about how a drug might be interacting with stuff it shouldn't.
So instead of just looking for heart or liver problems, you're kind of casting a wider net, seeing if the drug's causing trouble in other places.
Exactly. One way we do that is with computational modeling. We use computer programs to predict those off-target interactions based on the drug structure.
So you're looking for patterns and like similarities between the drug and known targets in the body.
Right. Trying to spot those red flags, like where the drug might bind to something it's not supposed to, just based on its shape and what it's made of.
It's like trying to figure out if a key will fit in a lock just by looking at it, even if you've never seen the lock before.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But we don't stop there. We also use experimental techniques, like high-throughput screening.
High-throughput screening. That sounds pretty intense.
It is. We basically test the drug against a huge library of potential targets, proteins, enzymes, receptors, to see if it binds to anything we weren't expecting.
So it's like a massive fishing expedition, but instead of fish, you're looking for off-target interactions.
Yeah, but a very targeted and sophisticated one. This process gives us a ton of data that we have to, carefully analyze to see if there are any potential problems.
I can imagine. But even with all this fancy technology, it seems like predicting every possible off-target effect would be, well, pretty much impossible.
You're right. The human body is incredibly complex, and there's always a chance of unexpected interactions. That's why it's so important to keep monitoring things even after a drug is approved and people are taking it.
So the safety investigation doesn't end when the drug's, available at the pharmacy.
Nope, not at all. Post-marketing surveillance means we keep an eye on the drug's safety once it's out in the real world. Doctors and pharmacists are really important for this because they report any bad reactions they see in their patients.
So it becomes like a big team effort to track how the drug's behaving in a much larger group of people.
Exactly. And if we start seeing an unexpected side effect, we can investigate more to see if it's caused by an off-target interaction. We might look at where the drug is going in the body and how much of it there is to see if it's building up in a certain organ, or we might look at how it's being broken down to see if it's messing with the body's natural ways of getting rid of toxins.
It's like putting together a puzzle, using all the information we have about the drug and how it interacts with the body to understand why a certain side effect might be happening.
That's a great way to put it. And the more pieces we have, the clearer the picture gets. But even with all this monitoring and investigation, there's always a bit of uncertainty in drug development. We can try to minimize risks, but we can't get rid of them entirely.
So it's a balancing act,
Yeah.
right? Weighing the potential benefits of a new drug against the potential risks. But who gets to decide where that balance lies? Who makes the rules for safety testing?
That's where regulatory agencies come in. Organizations like the FDA here in the US and the ICH, the International Council for Harmonization, they set those strict guidelines for drug safety testing.
So these agencies are kind of like the guardians of drug safety, making sure that new medications are really thoroughly checked out before they get to patients.
Exactly. They look at all that data from the preclinical studies we talked about, the hERG assay, the liver enzyme assay, the off-target screening, and they also oversee the clinical trials where the drug is actually tested in people.
Clinical trials, that's where things go from the lab to real people. How do those work?
Well, usually there are three main phases of clinical trials before a drug can be approved.
3 phases. So what happens in each one?
Well, phase one is the first time we really get to see how the drug works in people. We test it in a small group of healthy volunteers, just to see how well it's tolerated and, how it's absorbed and eliminated and what kind of side effects it might have.
So it's like putting those ADME properties we were talking about earlier to the test in real life.
Exactly. We're getting that real human data.
Yeah.
And then we move to phase two, and that's where we actually start testing the drug in a larger group of people who actually have the condition the drug is supposed to treat.
Oh, okay. So now it's not just about safety anymore. It's also about whether the drug actually works.
Yeah, exactly. We call that efficacy. Does it actually do what it's supposed to do? But of course, we're still watching out for safety and side effects too. And finally, we have phase three, which is, it's the biggest and the most expensive phase.
This is where the crowds come in, right?
That's right. The drug is tested in thousands of patients, sometimes even across multiple countries, just to be really sure about its efficacy and safety in all sorts of different people. It's all about getting solid data before we can even think about submitting it for approval.
Wow, it's a long road. From those first safety tests to these huge clinical trials, it sounds like every step is designed with safety in mind.
It really is. And even then, even after a drug is approved and people are taking it, remember, we still keep monitoring for any problems through post-marketing surveillance.
It's like a lifelong commitment to making sure these medications are safe. It makes you realize how much work goes into bringing a new drug to market and all the different things that have to be considered.
It is a complex process, but it's all driven by this need to keep patients safe. We want to make sure that the medications people depend on are, as safe and effective as they can be.
Well, I think we definitely dug into some of that complexity today. It's been a really eye-opening deep dive. I'm leaving here with a much better understanding of how drug safety testing works and the dedication of all the scientists who work so hard to protect us.
I'm glad to hear that. It is a fascinating field, and honestly, it deserves more attention.
For sure. So to all our listeners out there, I hope this deep dive give you a better understanding of the whole process. All those steps that go into ensuring the safety of the medicines we all rely on.
And remember, the next time you see a new drug at the pharmacy, think about that whole journey it took to get there, all that careful scrutiny it went through.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.